Hello, my name's Horst. I am making this video to showcase my quote-unquote new Chris Craft Cherokee 32 sailboat. This is a 1968 boat, and the main reason I'm making the video is that there's like zero information on the internet. It's actually amazing to ever Google anything these days and come up with zero responses. Also, there are zero videos about this model, and so I'm finding it a bit of a challenge to find any resources to help me restore this thing. So I thought, just for posterity's sake, I would make a couple of videos about this boat, just so if anyone else runs into a Cherokee 32, at least there'll be one result that comes up when they look on YouTube. A lot of people don't know, Chris Craft did make sailboats for a brief period, I think roughly 65 to 73, something like that. The Cherokee, which was the 32-foot boat, I think they only made about 40 of them. So, and who knows how many are still left, because this is 50 years ago. So I have one of the 40 here in my hands. It's a pretty nice boat, especially for its time. So let me start showing you from the outside. Here she is, up on stands in the boatyard. This is April 1st, so here in New York State in the Finger Lakes, winter hasn't quite let go of the weather yet. As you can see, most of the other boats here, actually all the other boats, are still out of the water. But this is Titania. I think we're going to keep that name. It's a pretty elegant and exciting name. It seems fitting for her somehow. The Cherokee 32 was designed by Sparkman and Stevens. I would love to know the history of how they ended up being involved with Chris Craft. But when you look at her, you can really see the influence. Beautiful rising shear line, low freeboard. It's cutaway in the front and the rear. Bolt-on iron keel that has kind of a bulb thing going on the bottom. We have this kind of a hull shape right here. So a little bit of a V, not too flat bottomed. What I heard from the previous owner is that you take her out, a little breeze hits, she immediately leans over 10 or 15 and then is just dead solid and moves through the water like a tank. Keel setup is pretty unusual, at least from my limited experience. It's actually through bolted. So there's recesses. See if I can zoom in. There are 10 recesses where you can see the head of the bolt right there, and the bolt goes cleanly through this flange where the keel widens out up into the middle of the inside in the bilge. So I have to figure out what to do with that. They seem like they were filled in with some kind of caulk. I mean, you wouldn't want to fare them in. You need access to it, but you don't want them exposed either. So my plan for the moment is to grind this thing all the way down, get everything loose off, put some Interprotect 3000 on it, fare the lumpiness out of it, and then 2 more coats of Interprotect. And these recesses up here, and also a little bit of a seam between the flange of the keel and the fiberglass, I'll probably fill with Boat Life, and then put the Interprotect over the top of that. The hull is solid fiberglass. The decks and the cabin top are fiberglass cored with hard foam. I'm not sure how common that was in 1968, but it feels very solid, so I'm glad they did that. Along either side of the cockpit there are missing right now because I removed them to work on them, but there are beautiful teak combings that come and wrap around into the side of the cabin, and also which hook into teak traveler base. So I've got those combings at home now. I'm sanding them and epoxying them and varnishing them. Okay, here we can see from the stern. We have this pretty cutaway stern here. The rudder is not original. I don't really know the story of where the original one went, but the 2 owners ago, I'm in contact with that couple, and they made this one out of metal and said it worked really well. So I'll probably grind it down, epoxy it, and not think about it for this season, and then you'll see next year how I feel about it. But it looks like it's hung on kind of a partial skeg, I suppose. Here along the side of the boat I have the mast. Seems like a pretty robust spar. If I have time, I would love to paint it white. We'll see. I've always liked the look of a white mast. I'll give more details about the diameter of the rigging a little later. I've started to remove a lot of the stuff from the mast in preparation for painting. There are 2 spreaders, one set of spreaders that are wood, seem to be made out of maybe spruce, maybe it's Sitka spruce. I've got them at home right now and have finished sanding them and epoxying them, and now I'm going to varnish them, so they're going to look pretty nice. I've got new spreader lights for them all ready to go also. And then over here we have the boom, which has I feel like it's pretty long for this size boat. It has a round profile instead of an oval profile like you usually see. Okay, up on deck. As I mentioned, it is foam cord. There's been a bunch of changes to it over the years, many of which I'll probably undo. One of which is this companionway slider cover, which just seems to be made out of painted plywood, and I'll probably get rid of that and make something nice out of teak. I should mention that I build furniture for a living, so doing a lot of the woodwork on this boat is nothing but fun for me. There are a bunch of handrails that have currently, were removed by the previous owner so he could refinish them, and didn't put them back on. That's what all these pieces of duct tape are covering up the holes. We have 2 door aids there, one into the head, one into the saloon, and then it's a keel stepped mast. The decks are kind of interesting. This is like a faux molded teak that's just an imprint molded into the fiberglass, and then I guess the gel coat is a slightly different color, so it gives the appearance of having teak decks. They're not actually in that bad a shape. There's a teak tow rail that runs all the way around, and then we have scupper holes on both sides midships here that drain down through the cabin out through the bottom. Another one of the changes is this forward hatch. Somewhere along the line, the original hatch went missing, and this is another kind of simple wood contraption, which drives me a little crazy. Doesn't actually come out and cover the original footprint of whatever the original hatch was, so I'll be rebuilding that. And here I can only assume that this was maybe a small dorade, this hole. We have a little, I guess it's called a hawse pipe for the chain, and somebody has added on an anchor roller here. The roof of the cabin has kind of a stucco slash popcorny kind of effect. Not crazy about it, but I certainly don't want to take the time to grind it flat either. Hopefully it'll look good with a little paint. Cockpit, not terribly huge. Made a little worse by the fact that the some owner, maybe this 2 owners ago, added a little box here in the back, simple plywood box. I can see, there is not a lot of storage here, so that's a good place for winch handles and binoculars and so on, but I'll probably remove it. It's taking up a spot where 2 people could sit behind the tiller. We have the teak traveler there. We have access to a lazarette, which is, because of the cutout on the back of the boat, is very shallow actually back there. And the whole locker underneath is just all one piece, so whether you go in through that hatch or you open up this one, it's all one big space underneath. These winches are bolted to the deck and to the sides of the coamings. I have currently removed. At least the 2 latter ones are, what were they called? Yeah, they were South Coast winches here with the kind of winch handles that go completely through out the other side, big flat bar. Also here, up on the cabin top, there's a bronze South Coast. And then there's this different kind that I haven't figured out yet. Yeah, I think actually these are also South Coast, just with a different mechanism. There's a winch handle fits down over this and turns it, and then it makes the whole thing rotate. Got the engine controls here on the port side in the cockpit. Forward, reverse, and your throttle, oil, volts, and temperature. There's no key, as far as I can tell, for this boat. There's just a button right there to engage the starter, and then your choke. We have some funky drainage. We have the 2 drains at the front end of the cockpit, which run through hoses out the side of the hull, and then these grooves that are sort of underneath the coamings. You can actually see water collecting there. Each of them have a hole which has a hose that runs and dumps out into the cockpit, one on each side. I don't know. It seems like something that could clog with leaves very easily. Here at the stern we have, it looks like openings for 3 dorades, I guess. Not sure what the point is. 2 big ones, one of which is currently occupied. I have a bag over it. And then the smaller one in the rear there. And then we have this lazarette hatch with the, someone has stenciled life jackets on it. It has the same sort of faux teak imprint as the deck does. And then here we have the teak tow rail coming around the back with some chocks there, stern light, and then of course the push pit or stern pulpit. On the back of the cabin there are 2 compasses, both Ritchies. I believe they're in pretty good shape. Seem pretty decent. On the port side, someone at some point added a small Hawkeye depth sounder. Not sure if that's functional or not. I've got duct tape over the tops of these until I verify that they're not dripping anything. And then on both sides we have 6 screws. Don't think that that's original. They basically hold up these sort of mahogany covers that are mounted on the backs of these, that you'll see when we get inside, whose only point seems to be to hide the back of the compass and the wire coming off of it. It's kind of extreme. I'm not crazy by the look, so we'll probably get rid of them and then fill all these holes in. The tow rail is teak, and mostly you see screws holding it on, but every once in a while, like right there, there is a cap. And there's one that's capped. So my thinking is originally these were all plugged, so you had a nice smooth expanse of teak. But it's like a lot of the screws have become proud, or the teak has shrunk, so you couldn't even fit a plug in. So I think I will probably drill them out slightly more so that the screw can be more recessed, and then try and plug them again, and then epoxy and varnish the whole thing. We'll see. The side of the cabin has these 2 very flush mount type port lights here, and then 2 smaller ones up across from the head and then up in the V-berth. The one that's in the head on the port side opens. Above them there's this sort of eyebrow teak strip decorative thing, and the cabin above the teak strip is this sort of popcorn textured type gel coat, and below it is smooth. And here we have the Chris Craft logo. There's some interesting inconsistencies, I guess, in some of the hardware. Sometimes you have like this little car, looks like it's bronze, and this horn cleat that's midships is bronze, but then the 2 horn cleats up front and in the rear are aluminum. You have the bronze but then these stainless steel winches on the sides of the coamings. Here on the starboard side, next to this forward winch, there's a fill for the gas. This has an atomic 4, and there used to be a kind of a donut, decorative donut around the base of that, made out of teak, which sort of disintegrated, so I'll have to recreate that. On the port side, about halfway up, there's a pump out spot for the holding tank.